My name is Howard Ebert, and I am an addict. I want to welcome you all here. I want to get started right away because we only have an hour today and an hour next week. And what I decided to do is rather than spend the time going over, doing a flyover of the third part of the 12th step, I wanted to go back to the beginning because I've had so many questions about the first part of this. I'm going to spend this week and next week going over the initial part of this, taking people through steps one, two, three, four, maybe even up to eight if we get lucky by that time. But at least we can go over this stuff right now. If you have the workbook, I'm going to start on what is page 2 in the workbook. Let me put it up here so you could match it up because there are a couple of versions of the workbook going around out there. This is, there we go. This is the page that I'm referring to. In your book, it may be page 2, but it's the page that says triage and qualification. Because with the newcomer, we want to make sure that we're dealing with an addict or an alcoholic. So we start out on page 58. If you go to page 58, paragraph 2, and we're going to jump around. And what I will try and do is, as we go from one page to the other, tell you where we're going so you can write in, like right after 58.2 here, I'm going to suggest go to page 25.1. And then after 25.2, you were going to say go to page 59, etc. So we're on page 58.2. The line says, if you've decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any lengths to get it, then you're ready to take certain steps. So, what does that mean exactly? What is it that we have, and what does going to any lengths mean? Well, let's right next to that line on page 58.2, please write, see page 25.1, because what you'll find on page 25.1 is what I call the AA brochure. It tells people what we have. It answers that question. If you want what we have, here's what we have. On page 25, paragraph 1, the paragraph begins with there is a solution. You go down 3 lines from the bottom of that. We have found much of heaven. And I'm going to suggest you highlight it in pink because it's also a promise, but highlight that and the whole next paragraph because that's what we're talking about. This is the AA brochure. You know, when you go on vacation somewhere, whether it's Hawaii or wherever it is, you get a brochure that tells you where to go, the highlights, where to eat, and so on. This is our brochure. It tells people what we have, they will find here. And it says, we have found much of heaven and have been rocketed into a fourth dimension of existence of which we had not even dreamed. The great fact is just this and nothing less, that we have had deep and effective spiritual experiences and have revolutionized our whole attitude towards life, toward our fellows, toward God's universe. The central fact of our lives today is the absolute certainty that our Creator has entered into our hearts and lives in a way which is indeed miraculous. Or you can read that as a central fact of our lives today is the absolute certainty that our Creator has entered into our hearts and lives in a way. It means the same thing, which is indeed miraculous. He has commenced to accomplish those things for us which we could never do by ourselves. That is what we have. And on page 58, it tells us going to any lengths to get it. Well, what are we talking about? What does going to any lengths mean? Well, first of all, let's answer the question about going to any lengths to get it. What is it? What is the it that we're talking about? Well, in the words of my friend and neighbor, Donna J., it is a life run by God. And the details of going to any lengths you'll find if you turn to page 59 and 60. So after on page 25.2, after you see we could not do by ourselves, you may want to write, go to page 59 and 60. Because here's a layout of the going to any lengths. These are the lengths that we're talking about. Now, I'm not going to go through them, read them to you now. I'm trying to save time, but that's the point of telling people this is what we're talking about in terms of going to any lengths. However, I have my own set of links that I want people to go to. Besides what's on page 59, I've got my own ideas about this. First of all, are you willing to be qualified? And by doing so, we read page 20, paragraph 5, and 20, all the way through 21. That describes the moderate, the hard, and the real alcoholic. I'm not going to take the time to read that. I'm assuming most of you are familiar with it, but it's the definition of the moderate, the hard, and the real alcoholic. So, are you willing to be qualified? Because some people are here by mistake. Are you willing to take the steps quickly? Yes, this is a race. If you run into people at meetings that say it's not a race, get away from those people as quickly as you can, because it is absolutely a race. That window is slowly closing, whether you realize it or not. And by the time it slams shut and the obsession to use returns, it's too late to do anything about it. So we're talking about a window of opportunity here that's going to last 2 days. We're assuming you're going to relapse tomorrow night. That's all we got to deal with, 48 hours. So it is absolutely a race. We are racing against that window. We want to slow it down and stop it from slamming shut, because it will, and we don't know when. Are you willing to attend specific meetings early on? And one of the handouts that I give out is a list of those meetings. I don't want to take the time now to go through it. It is in the booklet that you have. It's handout number 1, I believe, or handout appendix number 5, I believe. Yeah, appendix number 5 in the book that you have. But basically, these are big book studies. These aren't big book discussions. These aren't big book speaker meetings. These are big book studies, the kind that Paige does, the kind that I do, the kind that other people do. And you'll find a great number of people on that list to go to. Every night there's a big book study, and several on some of the nights. So that's where I want you to go for the next period of time. Are you willing to discuss? Are you willing to focus just on the big book until we get through this process? And incidentally, this process is not just 48 hours long. Once we get through this material in 48 hours, we then start to go through the book from the title page, word for word, line by line, the way it's supposed to be done. But we need to get that window to slow down and stop moving. And that's why we're doing this work first. We want to get to a certain degree of inventory, a certain degree of amends, and some kind of enlightened spirit, so that with that enlightened spirit, we can then go through the book word for word, line by line. So while we do that, are you willing to focus just on the big book? What does that mean? Leave aside the 12 and 12. Leave aside Comes of Age. These are all important books. Put them aside. Any of those books, Living Sober, put that aside into the fire. Get rid of that book. If anyone is telling you that that's a great book to read in the beginning, it is not. It is not. And the way I know it's not is if you go to the title page, the table of contents, the second to last thing in the table of contents tells you to read the big book. Not the first thing, the second to last thing in the table of contents of that book. That should alert you right away that this is not a book to follow. So put that aside, okay? Where was it? Oh, are you willing to be completely honest with me? And I'm talking about sex. Checks. meds. When we get to that inventory, I need you to be honest with me about finances, about sex. I need you to tell me what medications you're on. I will not form a judgment. I will not tell you what to do about those medications, but I need to know what we're dealing with. So I'm going to ask you about that, and I expect you to be honest with me. Are you willing to take a service commitment now? And by that, I mean every meeting you go to, get there a little bit early and ask the person who seems to be the host, you got something for me to do? Can I read something? Can I take a position? I want to be part of this group. Give me something to do. If it's a live meeting and they don't have something for you to do, tell them I will be your door greeter, because you could never have too many door greeters, and most meetings don't even have one. So volunteer to do that. But I want you to take a commitment. Why? If we turn to page 129, paragraph 3, and I'm a little slower today because I'm doing this with one hand. 129, paragraph 3. The last two lines of that paragraph. During those first days of convalescence, and that's what we're in, your first days, this will do more to ensure his sobriety than anything else. I'm sorry, we should have started above that sentence, that it is well to let him go as far as he likes in helping other alcoholics, which means taking commitment. During those first days of convalescence, this will do more to ensure his sobriety than anything else. In other words, get busy early. Get busy early. Um, and then the last thing that I'm going to ask you is, you willing to learn the traditions? Because after we go through the book word for word, line by line, we're going to use Comes of Age. We're going to have to go out and get it at some point, and we're going to do a workshop on the traditions. So we're not forgetting about those things, but we're putting them second. Right now, recovery is more important. So let's start really on the work. That's the qualification and the triage. That's laying the groundwork. Here's where we start. Let me take my book and put it aside. Okay. Actually, I want to start here. Let me change my screen share. Um, Oops, not that. Screen share. I apologize. I'm going to be a little bit slow here. Oh, actually, I can get to it from here. Can you see that, the set aside prayer? Yes, okay. That's where I want to start. That's the way we start every meeting of going through the big book. And that's the way that you should start your book every time you go to read this book. And please don't write it down in the front of the book. Make a copy of this, fold it up, and keep it in the book. So let's do this together. Dear God, please set aside everything I think I know about myself, my disease, the big book, and the 12 steps. Everything I think I know about the program, the fellowship, all spiritual terms, and especially about you, God, so I may have an open mind and a new experience. Please help me see the truth. Amen. And it's not in your for some reason I left that out of the book. I apologize, but it should be. So if you want to take a screenshot, there it is. Now let's get back to the book. I'm on, like I said, this is page 4 in the manual that you have, that states this is a threefold disease. And I'm going to ask that you go to the doctor's opinion. The end of the doctor's opinion has a lot of space under it. And I don't like blank space in the big book. So I filled every blank space I possibly can. And that means most of the margins on most of the pages. If you've seen my big book, you know what I mean. I fill every blank, even between the lines. I don't like those blanks. So I find stuff to put there too. So if we go to the last page of the doctor's opinion, I'd like you to write down that this is a threefold disease. It's a disease of, let me blow it up. It's a disease of the body, manifested by a physical allergy that shows itself in the phenomenon of craving, and it's covered in the doctor's opinion and up to page 23. The second is a disease, a malady of the mind, as manifested by the mental obsession that is detailed on page 23 to 43. And it's a spiritual malady. It is not a twofold disease, the body and the mind. Please don't ever forget the spiritual malady, because without the spiritual malady, there wouldn't be the mental obsession. Without the mental obsession, there wouldn't be the allergy. It's the spiritual malady that sets this in motion. It's our being restless and irritable, and we're going to get to that later. But it's that groundwork that makes us consider doing something that we know, based on our past, is not going to turn out well. And we give in to that at some point, that obsession, that thought, which has become an obsession. We take the chemical into our body, trigger the allergy, and we're off to the races, because once it's in us, we don't have any control over it. So let me go back here a little bit. We're going to start in the book by going to the doctor's opinion. And if you have the fourth edition, it's page XXVI. If you have the study version, and if you like, at the end of the meeting tonight, I'll show you how to get the study version. It's the big book. It's the first edition with a blank page every other page for notes. Like I said, I don't like blank pages, so I fill them up. But if you go in the study version, the first few pages are different, only the first few. Once we get to Bill's story, it's the same numbers all the way through. But in the study version, it's XXIV. In the fourth edition, it's XXVI. In either case, if we turn to that, please, and let me get to it in my book, XXIV, we are looking at the what I call the connective tissue between the letter and the statement, not between the two letters. There are not two letters. I'm sure you've heard that at meetings, that there's the first letter, there's the second letter. It's not two letters. And I'll show you how I know that in a moment, because I can read. It tells me that it's not a letter. But we're going to go to this connective tissue, and I'll read the beginning of it to point out why I know it's not a letter. We have just finished the letter. The letter begins with "to whom it may concern" and ends with "very truly yours." That's a letter. That's the way letters read. So we have a letter. Now we have something else. And Bill tells us the physician who, at our request, gave us this letter, see above, letter, has been kind enough to enlarge upon his views in another statement, which follows. Please underline that word "statement." And then the next sentence reinforces it, "in this statement." So twice he tells us what follows is a statement. Okay. And I know I'm being pedantic here, and it's not the most important point in the world, but there are certain things that just get under my skin, and that's one of them. It's not a letter and a letter, it's a letter and a statement. But in any case, what I want to draw your attention to is one, two, three, four, I think it's 5 lines down. You see the line that the body is quite as abnormal as the mind. Please highlight that. Please underline body and mind. And then please go down to the end of that paragraph, 3 lines from the bottom of that. It says, but we are sure that our bodies were sickened as well. In our belief, any picture of the alcoholic which leaves out the physical factor is incomplete. And then I'm going to suggest you go to the very next line that begins with the doctor's theory. And I'm going to ask that you highlight and underline the following 6 words. We have an allergy to alcohol. Please underline and highlight just those 6 words. And I'm a believer in defining terms, because if we don't, and we let people assume things, maybe we're going to come to different conclusions. So I like to define terms, especially words that I think I know the definition of, like allergy, like recovered. I thought I knew what that means. I had to learn what that means. But allergy is defined as the following, and you may want to write this down, maybe at the bottom of that page that we're on. An allergy is defined as a body's abnormal reaction, a body's abnormal reaction to any food, substance, or chemical. Please underline the word abnormal. Abnormal. Abnormal means irregular, not typical. The typical reaction to the ingestion of alcohol and these chemicals is to at some point say no. You go out drinking with normal people, or go out drugging with normal people, and you offer them some more, and at some point they're going to say no, thank you. Either I'm going to get sick if I do anymore, or I've got to drive, so I got to be careful. Or they start saying some very strange things like, I don't need any more. I'm right where I want to be. Or the strangest sentence of all, I'm starting to feel it, so I've got to be careful. Well, you've got to drink through that shit. You've got to use through that, because the promised land is about 4 or 5 lines beyond that. If you give up there, you miss the party. In any case, that's what we're talking about. We have an allergy to alcohol, and we cannot consume it in any form at all. Let's go to the next page. The first full paragraph. I'm sorry, not the next page. Page XXVIII. Where is that? Hang on, why don't I have that written down here? XX. I think I have the wrong page. It's XXVI. There's an I missing here. It should be XXVIII. I apologize. It is the first full paragraph on that page. It begins with "we believe." So if you have the 4th edition, it's XXVIII. Just add an I there. I'm sorry it got left off when I printed this up. But we're going to read that paragraph. I'm going to ask that you highlight the whole paragraph. And it says, we believe, and so suggested a few years ago, that the action of alcohol on these chronic alcoholics is, and please underline, a manifestation of an allergy. We just said it's an allergy, and that the phenomenon of craving is limited to this class. That is what triggers, that is what happens when we take that drug or that drink. It triggers the craving, and that craving never occurs in the normal, average, temperate drinker or user. These allergic types can never safely use, please underline this phrase, alcohol in any form at all. Now, that's where I'm going to stop reading on this paragraph, but I want to take a look at that and be clear about that. I have a very liberal interpretation of that. Alcohol in any form to me means a pill, a powder. I don't care if I drink it, swallow it, snort it, shoot it, smoke it, shove it, any chemical I put in my body that alters my perception of reality is alcohol in one form or another for our purposes. So if you think that I can safely use narcotic medication because I've never had a problem with it, my problem is with alcohol or my problem is with cocaine, think again. Because anything that I ever used at some point, I didn't have a problem with. So put that aside, alcohol in any form. And if you want to take the strict interpretation of that, alcohol in any form, NyQuil, don't take it. It's got alcohol. Vanilla extract, stay away. It's got alcohol. Believe it or not, most hair conditioners have alcohol. Now, I'm not saying you have to stay away from that, but just knowing it has alcohol could trigger a reaction. So I'd stay away from that. Anything that contains alcohol, I would stay away from. So, that being the physical aspect that we're talking about, let's now talk about the obsession. Let's define it first. Let's go to page 22, paragraph 4. The paragraph begins, we know that while the alcoholic, I want to draw your attention to the last 3 lines, and then we'll define it. Once he takes any alcohol, whatever, into his system, and you may want to underline the phrase any alcohol, whatever, it's just like we read in the doctor's opinion, alcohol in any form whatsoever. Into his system, something happens, please underline that, both in the bodily, let's underline that, and the mental. Above bodily, let's write craving, and above mental, let's write obsession, which makes it virtually impossible, please underline impossible, for him to stop. In the bottom of that page, let's define the term we just introduced. Not allergy, obsession. An obsession is defined as a thought which overcomes all thoughts to the contrary. A thought which overcomes all thoughts to the contrary. Meaning a thought that could make you believe in a lie. A thought that could make you believe in a lie. That's what an obsession is. And we've just read, once we take it in our body, it becomes impossible for us to stop. If we go to page after that line, impossible for him to stop, please see page 23, paragraph 4, bottom of the page. The tragic truth is that if a man be a real alcoholic, the happy day may never not arrive. He has lost control. Please underline control. At a certain point in the drinking of every alcoholic, he passes into the state where the most powerful desire, please underline desire, to stop drinking is of absolutely no avail. This tragic situation has already arrived in practically every case long before it's suspected. The fact is that most alcoholics, for reasons yet obscure, please underline, have lost the power of choice in drink. Please circle the word in. It doesn't say have lost the power of choice when drinking. It says we've lost the power of choice in drink, in anything concerning it. And we'll explain that in a moment. Our so-called willpower becomes practically non-existent. We are unable at certain times. Please underline that. Underline it several times, at certain times. Because if we're able to recall it, that doesn't mean it doesn't apply to us. At certain times, we're unable to bring into our consciousness with sufficient force the memory of the suffering and humiliation of even a week or a month ago. Please underline, we are without defense against the first drink. The almost certain consequences. Please underline certain. Certain means absolute, guaranteed. It's going to happen. Something that is certain is for sure. The certain consequences that follow taking even a glass of beer do not crowd into the mind. Please underline mind to deter us. If these thoughts, please underline thoughts, the thoughts we're talking about are the certain consequences of what happens. So if those thoughts of the certain consequences occur, they are hazy and readily supplanted. Supplanted means replaced. Replaced with the old threadbare. Threadbare means worn out. So it's replaced with the old worn out idea that this time we shall handle ourselves like other people. Please underline this time we shall handle ourselves like other people. And in the margin next to it, because I don't like blank spaces, let's write the big lie. Because that's the big kahuna. That's the big lie. That this time we're going to be able to drink like other people. There is the complete failure of the kind of defense that keeps one from putting his hand on a hot stove. And now I'm going to ask that you write this in. Perhaps the best place to do is on the bottom of the page. I know you may have to write small to do it, but it explains my statement about we have lost the power of choice in drink. You see, we've lost the power of choice to stop once we start because of the physical allergy. We've lost the power to choose not to start because of the obsession. So it's the obsession that makes us drink, but it's the allergy that makes us drunk. Or, as Dr. Silkworth said, the obsession condemns us to drink, the allergy condemns us to die. Harsh words, strong words, true words, valid words. If you're a real addict and a real alcoholic, we're talking about you. So I'm going to ask that you write that down at some point, maybe at the bottom of this page. If you write small, you could certainly fit it in. And now we're going to talk about the spiritual malady, the third part of this condition. That means we're going to have to go back to the doctor's opinion. And in the fourth edition, it's XXVIII, exactly where I said before that I used the wrong number. And once you get to that page, I want to draw your attention to the last two lines on the page. We are restless. Let's underline restless. Irritable. Let's underline irritable. And discontented. Please underline that as well. Unless they can again experience the sense, and please underline sense because it's not real. Something that's a sense is not real. A sense of ease and comfort which comes at once by taking a few drinks. Drinks which they see others taking with impunity after they have succumbed to desire, as many do, and the phenomenon of craving develops. When people ask me, how do I know craving is what happens when you take the drink? I hear people at meetings say, I've been craving a drink all day. No, you haven't. You've been thinking about it, maybe obsessing. But if you've been obsessing, as far as I'm concerned, the definition of obsession means you've already started drinking or using. But the point is, you've been thinking about it. It's up here. Things like what I just read tell you that obsession happens after we succumb to the desire, to the obsession. After they have succumbed to the desire, what is the desire? The obsession. As many do, the phenomenon of craving develops. That's simple. There, let me continue to read this. They pass through the well-known stages of a spree, emerging remorseful with a firm resolution to not drink again. Does that sound familiar? And please underline, this is repeated over and over. And we could stop there for a moment. What is repeated over and over? Well, here it is. The answer is periods of unbearable drunkenness. We drink until we can't. We use until we can't stand it anymore. Followed by periods of unbearable sobriety. We stop until we can't stay stopped anymore. Because all we could think about is think about picking it up. I think about picking it up, 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 pick it up, pick it up. It's all I could think of. Take a drink, take a drink, take a drink, take a drink, take a line, take a line, take a pill, take a pill, take a shot, take a shot, take a shot. That's all I could think about. And I can't stand it anymore, so I give in to that until I can't handle, I can't bear it anymore, or I run out of money and I have to stop. And I stay stopped until I can't stand it anymore because the voices come back. Take a line, take a drink, take a hit, take a line, take a pill, take a hit, take a line, take a pill. It's all I could think about. That's periods of unbearable sobriety. Right after where it says over and over, you may want to write, see page 51, paragraph 0. And let's turn to page 51. Paragraph 0, which is the top paragraph, incidentally. I want to draw your attention to the third line from the top of the page. And I only want to isolate one part of this. It says, leaving aside the drink question, they tell why living was so unsatisfactory. So what Bill is telling us here on this page is we're done talking about the alcohol. We finished drinking. We finished using. That was yesterday. If I'm talking to a newcomer who hasn't used today, I'm talking to him that we are living in a different reality now. Yesterday was using, today is not. Has everything gotten better today just because you didn't use? And that's what the question that we're posing here is. We're leaving aside the drink question. Why didn't everything just start coming up roses? What is life like? What is our unsatisfactory life like? So after the word unsatisfactory, you may want to write, see page 52, 2, and let's go to 52, 2. And you may want to highlight the whole thing, but I'm starting at the third line down. And please, in the blank area of the margin, write the bedevilments. These are the bedevilments. This is what life is like without a program and without our drugs. This is what life is like. We're having trouble with personal relationships, which refers to the physical dimension, our relationship with the world and everything in it. Then there's the mental dimension. We can't control our emotional natures. We're prey to misery and depression. We couldn't make, oops, let me move that. There it is. And let me blow it up again. We couldn't make a living. We had a feeling of uselessness. And then in the spiritual dimension, we're full of fear because we don't have any faith. We don't have any courage. We're filled with fear. We're unhappy. We couldn't seem to be of real help to other people. When my life looks like that, saying I'm restless, irritable, and discontented doesn't even come close. I'm a raw nerve. Everything hurts. I am overly critical. I am judgmental. I am sarcastic. I am controlling. I am not a pleasure to be around. And this is what my life looks like. And so the questions to ask yourself, Mr. Newcomer, is do any of those things describe your life now? How's that working out for you? Whatever it is you're doing, how's it working out? I know how it's working out because you're sitting here talking to me. If it was working out real well, you wouldn't be here. You'd be somewhere else because this is the last place you want to be. And we're talking about work here. This is not fun. I've never known anybody to look at those list of steps I told you in the beginning and hone in on that ninth one and say, gee, amends, that looks like fun. I can't wait to do that. So we're going to be asking you to do some things that you don't want to do. But if your life looks like this, do you want it to continue? If you do, close the book and go home. Because that's what you have to look forward to. And that's on a good day, because that's on the day that you're not using. Okay, that's what your life is going to look like. So we're going to assume that that makes sense. And because we're starting to run out of time, if we turn to page 17, go back to page 17, I think every newcomer should be directed to page 17 when they first come into the room. That's that important to page. Now, if we look through the page, you'll notice certain words in the first paragraph that I'm going to ask you to underline. The words are fellowship, friendliness, understanding, indescribably wonderful, camaraderie, joyousness, and democracy. That describes the spirit of the fellowship. That's what you run into. That's what you encounter when you come into a meeting. That's what the fellowship provides. However, and if we go down to paragraph 3, it says the feeling of having shared in a, I'm sorry, paragraph 2. Paragraph 2, the last section of it, it says the feeling of having escaped is, the feeling of having shared a common peril. Please underline common peril and above it write fellowship. That's what brings us together in fellowship. We've shared a common peril that brings us together in fellowship. So common peril represents fellowship. So fellowship is only one element in the cement which binds us. But that in itself would never have held us together. So he begins by praising fellowship, but then tells us it's not enough. It's not enough. The feeling of the tremendous fact, continuing in the next paragraph, for every one of us, as we have discovered, please underline a common solution. And above that, write the steps. The steps. See page 59 and 60. We have a way out on which we can absolutely agree and upon which we can join in brotherly and harmonious action. That is the great fact, the great news this book carries to those who suffer from alcoholism, not the news of the fellowship. What makes this program, this book, different from any other method of treatment for alcoholism that has ever existed is we have a solution. We are not just joined together because we have a common peril. We've shared a common peril. That won't last long. We have to have a solution, and we do. We find it in the steps. And like I said, we're starting to run out of time here. So I want to get to those steps. If we turn to page 44, maybe we can get through 1 and 2 today. I thought we can get to 4, but it wasn't going to happen. Let's turn the page, like I said, 44, paragraph 1. 3 lines down, is a statement. If when you honestly want to, you find you cannot quit entirely, underline quit entirely, or circle or when drinking, please underline you have little control over the amount you take, you're probably an alcoholic. So let's take those statements and turn them into questions. There's a blank space above the title of this chapter that you can write that in. And let's write these questions. Have you been able to quit entirely on your own resources? Have you? If your answer is yes, close the book and go home. You don't need this. If you've been able to quit on your own, what are you doing talking to me? You got to have something better to do. And the second question, do you have any control over the amount you take once you start? Those are the two questions. I'm going to ask that you, underneath those two questions, you write out the first step. I know I forgot to write that in there, but writing out the first step. We admitted to ourselves that we were powerless. Dash. Don't leave out the dash. Don't put a comma in. There's a dash there. I've seen people do that. Instead of the dash, they put in a comma. That's not adequate. There's a dash. That our lives had become unmanageable. That our lives were unmanageable. The first part of that, before the dash, means I cannot handle my drinking, my using. And above the second part, after the dash, not the comma, please write, and I can't handle sobriety either. You see, we don't have a problem with drugs. We have a problem with sobriety. We can't stay that way. So if we've answered those two questions, I'm going to ask that you now turn back to page 30. And the second paragraph, there is a statement which says, we've learned we had to fully concede to our innermost self that we were alcoholics. On the top of that page, let's turn that into a question. And the question is here, have we conceded to our innermost self that we were alcoholics? Please note the word is concede. It's not surrender. You'd think surrender was on every line of every page in this book, the way it gets thrown around at meetings. I'm sure, I hope, I'm not breaking any news to you, but the word surrender doesn't appear anywhere in the first 164 pages, not once. Not once does the word surrender appear. The word Bill uses is concede, concession. And you may want to write a definition under that question of the word concession, concede. Concession is absolute, total, unconditional surrender. Not just surrender. It's absolute, total, unconditional surrender. There is no air left in the balloon. Complete deflation of ego. We've heard those expressions. That's the only requirement for step one is complete deflation of ego. That's what we're talking about. Absolute, total, unconditional surrender. So I ask you, newcomer, have you conceded to your innermost self that you're alcoholic? If the answer is yes, congratulations, you've finished with step one, and it's time to move on to step two. And just to save time, I'm going to suggest we turn to page 47, paragraph 1. When therefore we speak to you of God, we mean your own conception of God. And I realize I've just skipped a whole important section, but actually I want to go back to something here that doesn't get spoken about enough. We're talking about lack of power in step two. So I'm going to give you an assignment. I'm going to ask you whether you have difficulty with the conception of God or not. I want you to take the piece of paper that you're looking at in this book, turn it over, and on the back of that page, I would like you to write the qualities you would like your higher power to have. Written assignment. Make a list of the qualities you'd like your higher power to have. Forgiving, loving, always present, has a sense of humor. If you doubt that, after this meeting, Google a baboon's ass. There's no reason for it to look that way except God saying, hey, look what I can do. Can you do that? And obviously, he's a Miles Davis fan. That goes without saying. But what are the qualities you would like your higher power to have? Okay. And I'm going to go get a cup of water or a cup of tea, and I'm going to come back. And when I come back, you have this list of qualities. I don't want to see the list. I see that you have something written, and that's all I care about. And once we establish that fact, we can then turn to page 47 at the top of the page, and this will make more sense. When we speak of God, we have to have a way to identify this power. So we're going to use the word that's most commonly used, which is God. But all through the book, Bill gives us a lot of euphemisms, a lot of synonyms or synonyms for that word. It's another way of saying God. If you have trouble with the G word, try Waldo. How about Waldo? I think the chapter We Agnostics should be retitled Where's Waldo? Because that's what it's like. If you're familiar with Where's Waldo, you know what I mean. So on page 41, it says, when therefore we speak to you of God, we mean your own conception of God. So when you hear the word God, I want you to look at that piece of paper you just wrote down. You just made notes on, because that's your conception of God. It's not mine, it's yours. So when you see the G word, when we use the G word, that's what we're talking about. And P.S., the next word sentence says this applies to other spiritual principles you'll find in this book. Spiritual principles like prayer, like meditation. When you hear those terms, you will define them. And we will get to that point later on. But no one's going to tell you this is prayer, this is meditation. It's your definition of those things. We just need a way to identify the things that we're talking about. Don't let any prejudice you may have against spiritual terms deter you from honestly asking yourself, please underline what they mean to you. So we begin with an examination of our beliefs, not what you've been taught, not what you've been told, not what you think. What are your ideas of God, of prayer, and of meditation? Just what do you think? What do you really think of those things? Not what you've been taught, not what you've been told. That's how we start. At the start, this was all we needed to commence spiritual growth, to effect our first conscious relation with God as we understand Him. Afterward, we found ourselves accepting many things which then seemed out of reach. That was growth. But if we wished to grow, we had to begin somewhere. So we used our own conception, what you have written down on that piece of paper, however limited it is. It is limited, but it's a start. Next page, next line. We needed to ask ourselves but one short question. One. The Hazelton Guide is 100. The NA Step Working Guide is 74. Counted them. 74 questions. If you weren't confused when you start, you will be confused by the time you finish. 74 questions on second step. My God. We have one. And here it is. Please write it down. In the blank area at the top of the page, we're going to ask ourselves this. Write down the question. Do I now believe, or am I willing to believe, that there is a power greater than myself? Once you answer that question, you're done with step 2. And since we're running out of time here, I'll just point out that at the bottom of this page is just something for those of you who've done this before. Mark Houston suggested a step 2 question that's even deeper. Do you now believe, or are you willing to believe, there's a power greater than yourself that can take you beyond where you are now in every area of your life, past here, past the experience you've already had? Do you believe there are realms of peace, love, freedom, happiness, understanding, areas of consciousness, wisdom, and power that you cannot even imagine? And that's where I'll stop at step 2, and we'll pick up at 3 and 4, and hopefully we can get to 8 next week. Thank you for having me.